and suddenly gets engaged.
Yeah, he said, I'm never ever going to pay someone's bill again.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are up to the new parak of Asoches Umen. So we are now learning about inter-employee relationships and employee-to-employer relationships. So it's two separate things that we're going to be discussing in this parak. So going through the Masechta, the first two parakim was about Metzias, right? The third parak, I forgot what it was about. Hazov was about money and transactions, and Ezel Neshech was about interest. Now we're getting into employee-employee relationship, labor law, union law, and the sort. Okay, so let's see what the Heilige Mishnah says. Hasoicher esa umnin. Someone hired umnin. What are umnin? So Tosfos tells us that umnin could be one of three things. Umnin can either be you're hiring someone who has a specific skill and the job is quoted. We would call that a contractor. Or it could be a schiryoim. A schiryoim is the guys that you pick up at the side of the street just to do labor for the day, whatever it is that you need, but it's a non-skilled labor. And then there are poyalim who you hire also for non-skilled labor, but the way they're hired is you hire them by the day for a specific task. So these are the three types of people that we are including here. Although umin usually means a trade that takes on something under contract. They fooled each other. So from the simplest reading of the Mishnah, it sounds like there's no issue between the employer and the employee. The employees fooled each other. So we'll have to see what that is. They don't have a claim in Bezdin to extract money from the other party. However, he could have tinus. Sometimes that can be worth a lot of money. Everybody needs somebody they can complain about. Now you have somebody you can officially have a recht to krechts and complain. Another Mishnah gets into detail. Socher es a chamer. You hired a truck driver. Chamer would be someone who operates a donkey. Vesa kader. It doesn't mean a potter. I believe even Rashi says maybe it might change the to karer, or somebody changes to karer. But it means he also is involved in the shipping industry. Lahavi praiprin lachalolin lakalo. This sounds like a shikol party planner. There were certain props that people had for a kala, special chairs and special decorations and special chuppahs. So you hired them to do something specific, which needs to get done, of course, at a specific time. The wedding is tonight, not tomorrow night. Or sometimes there's some paraphernalia that are needed for a levaya. So these are both time sensitive. Part of the processing of flax was to leave it soaked. If it stayed there too long, it would spoil it. So if someone was hired to remove those pishton, it's a critical situation. Anything that's a davar avad, and this does not mean the same davar avad that allows you to work on chalamoy. This just means that this particular thing needs to be get done during the contract time. The chazru behen, and they were chayzer. So then, makom she'ein shamadam, if you cannot find anybody else to easily replace the person that you hired and that committed to this job, seicher alayan. What you could do is, Rashi says, you can pay any price necessary to find somebody, to induce somebody to take on the job, and you could take it off of their work. And you could take it off of their work. They would have to pay. Oi, matan. Or you could fool them. And the Gemara will explain, you can promise them the world and then say, sorry. Hasoicher esa omnin. What if someone hired omnin, the chazru behem, and they were chayzer? So Rashi says this is specifically kablana. So this is a contractor. This is not an hourly worker. You hired somebody to do a job. Let's say the job's value would have been $10, and they did half the job, which means you would have to pay them $5. The chazru behem, and they were chayzer, yadam al atachtoin. What does yadam al atachtoin mean? Zokt Rashi, you did half the job, which means I would have to pay you $5. But what if the cost of labor went up this afternoon? And to finish the job, I wouldn't be able to find somebody to do that for $5. I'd have to pay them $7 to finish the job. So I could take those extra $2 out of the salary of the people in the morning. So now the people in the morning, instead of getting 5, are only going to get 3. And the people who finish the job, who you had to pay 7, they get paid 7. What if the cost of labor went down? Do the original employees say, okay, you hired somebody for $3 to finish it, so give us 7 for what we did in the morning, because we took on the whole job and we sort of subcontracted out to the second set of employees. Doesn't work that way. Too bad for you. You get the maximum of 5, and if the balabais got a better deal to finish up the job for 3, then that's the job, that's the deal that he got. Okay. Zokti Mishnah Vayter on Amar Aleph. What if the balabais backed out? In balabais chazar boy. What if the balabais in the middle of the job said, off my property, I don't need you anymore? Then it's yadoy latachtoin. So how does that manifest itself? So Rashi says, Yidin lahem lefi masha asu. You need to pay them right off the bat. If they did have the job, $5 off the bat you got to give them. What if the cost of labor went down? Al korcha yidin lahem kamosha pasak chutz mimasha tzorich loitzorish b'ashlemosa. So if the balabais backs out, then he has to give them $10, even though they only did half the job, minus whatever it would cost him to finish the job, provided that it would cost less than 5. If it would cost more than 5, then the bailam have to suffer, and they have to pay 5 for the first half of the job that they did, and the second half of the job they would have to pay whatever it takes, and of course that would surely not hurt the employee who the balabais backed out of. So in balabais chozer boy yadoy latachtoin. Kol mishana, whoever is the one who changes his contract. Now this Rashi says is not referring to someone walking off in the middle of the job. It's someone who didn't do what he was contracted to do. Rashi says, someone gave in a beged, wool, to a dyer to dye, and he wanted the dyer to dye it red. Yet the contractor did it black. He dyed it the wrong color. So then we say, let's say this beged, because it was dyed, is now worth $50 more than it was before it was dyed. It costed the merchant $30 to do. So if the shvach is more than the yitzia, all I have to do is pay the schar. So I, as the balabais, get the benefit from the appreciation of my beged, and I don't have to pay you any more than what you laid out. Why? Because you didn't stick to my contract. But the Metzia Ser Lashvach, what if the beged only appreciated by $20, yet it costed the woman $30 to do this operation? Too bad for the woman, he only gets what the beged appreciated due to his work. Whoever's chayzer, he always gets the short pencil. He's always going to be the one who's going to be yodel atachtoina, and the Gemara is going to explain. Now, this halacha that we learned, that the poilim, whoever is the aggrieved on, whoever is the one that was hurt, yadoy alehel yoina, that actually is under dispute. Our Mishnah clearly holds yadoy alehel yoina, but we're going to see in the Gemara today that there are tanoim that argue on this halacha. So Zok the Gemara, let's drill down a little bit to understand what the first case was. V'thitu ze'aseh. It doesn't say one was chayzer on the other one, which would then indicate that either the employees backed out on the owner or the owner backed out on the employees. It doesn't say that. It says they fooled each other, which seems to connotate ta'atu pa'alim ahadadi. The workers fooled each other. So what was the story? What happened? Hey Chadam, the balabais told employee A, you're my team leader. Zil oigerli payalim. I want you to represent me and to make a deal to hire payalim. So you're my HR manager. And the person who was in charge of hiring, and he fooled the workers that he hired. Hey Chedami, exactly what occurred that he fooled them. The balabais instructed his HR manager, I'm willing to pay 4. The Azal, and he figured he will protect his balabais. He's going to negotiate. That's the maximum budget. I'm going to try to get my balabais a better deal. He told the people whom he hired that the pay for this job is only 3. No, he wasn't far. So Frektamor Taruma is Maya Vidite. Why could I have any time on him at all? So for a couple, you didn't have to take the job. I offered you a job for 3, you took it. How can you be upset at me? I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't rip you off. I offered you 3, you're gonna get 3. Ido Amarle Balabais Vitlosa. But if the Balabais says, no, I'm only planning to pay 3, Biozal Il Amalu Barba, and then he lied and he told them that my Balabais will pay you 4, and Rashi adds Ula Erev, and come time for the pay at the end of the day, they only ended up with 3. Now they're upset. So if when he hired them, he says, I take full responsibility that you're going to get paid, well then, then he should have a chiyuv. They should be able to take him to Bezdin and force him to pay 4. And he'll have to absorb 1. The Tanya we learn, if you hire a poil to work in your field, and you ended up having him work in your friend's field. So basically, you hired somebody on behalf of your friend without even getting an appointment. This guy who hired for 3 instead of for 4, so who hired for 4 instead of for 3, it's no different than if he hired it on behalf of a total stranger, right? And what's the law by total stranger? The person who hired these workers have to pay them in full. They have to pay them 4. And then he has a right to demand from the balabais that you should pay me whatever you benefited. So over here as well, yes, in fact, he overpromised them, but he should still be able to force the balabais to pay. You know why? Because at the end of the day, even if you never hired me to find you workers, and I would have sent workers into your field, you would have had to pay for anyway, if that's what it costs to hire people. He said, so the Brisa proves that I'm mechuyev to pay their salary in full, no matter what I made up with them, and then I can go get back from the balabais whatever it is that he benefited. So you're right, I might have to lay out more money than I'll get from the balabais, but that's how it will work. So here as well, if he said schorchem alai, he should have to pay them in full the 4, and if the value of the work is only 3, he should be able to get that back from the balabais. When he hired them, he said, I'm not guaranteeing anything. The only money you're going to get is what the balabais promised you. And he said the balabais promised 4, but in fact, the balabais only promised 3. So he fooled them. So why don't we look at the market rates, right? For the work that they were hired, there's probably a general market rate for that type of work. And let the balabais pay whatever that is. Standard rates for this job is 3. But if you hold out and you wait for a balabais who maybe is a little desperate, he might give you more. And they would have wanted to hold out a little longer. I'm not taking $3, which is what everyone gets. Sometimes you can find an employer that's going to pay a little more. So that's what they were waiting for. The Amrulay, they can tell him, Ilab the Amrit Long, Piarba, had you not promised us that the balabais was going to pay us 4, Tarchinon Umaskerinon Barba, we would have hustled and we would have found an employer that was willing to pay us for it. So that's why we have tarumas. You don't have to pay us. The balabais doesn't have to pay us, but we have tarumas because we would have been able to find somebody to pay us more, and you messed us up. Those that didn't have benefits.
Just the dollar, or what?
The benefit was that they let you work and they paid you at the end of the day.
Conditions that they offered, part of it, or no?
Well, it might be, but whatever it is, the human resources person promised a compensation package that was in fact much better than what was actually delivered. Maybe you know who they hired? These aren't regular workers who this HR guy hired. These actually had their own fields to work in. So they didn't need the job. They were busy. They were busy working on their own fields. But if you're going to pay me a fortune, sure, I'll do work for you. I run an HVAC company. But if someone tells me, I'll pay you $10,000 an hour, come work for me today, I'll strap on my tool belt, I'll jump into my truck, and I'll work. Why? Because for $10,000 an hour, I'm going to do it, right? So here, I would have never taken on the job at 3, even though that's the going rate. I have my own work to do. But if you're going to be paying me 25% premium, that's why I took it. The Amrulay, they told him, Ilav the Amrtan Barabah, had you not told us that we're going to pay you 4, have a Zila Bamilsa Liskuriye. So Voltman's Nishka passed. We would never, we're Balabatim ourselves. We hire other people. Why would we go work for you? We would have never done it. So that's why they have Tarumas. What do you mean?
Someone else offered them something.
But that's not what the Gemara is saying. The first teretz was we would have found somebody else to pay us more. The second teretz is we wouldn't have taken on the job at all. Let's say it's speaking where we have regular payalim, so we're not a balabas. Going back to original approach, and the amrlay, even the amrit lambar ba, this Levi is going to lie. Since we knew you were overpaying us, we knew that you promised to overpay us. We did extra good work. That I wouldn't like. You should be doing extra good work no matter how much I pay you if you take a deal. But they said for $3 an hour, we would have given you the $3 an hour work. For $4 an hour, we really gave you the highest quality. We put our kishkas into it. Right? Isn't that what you expect? And this is called employee-itis. We worked better because you paid us more. I used to have an employee always say, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. But sometimes if you pay a lot of money, you still get monkeys. It's self-mission. And now you're only paying us 3. We gave you work that's far superior to the pay that we ended up getting. Frank Gemara, so let's see. If the Taka did better work, maybe they should get paid more. The Lechsavu the Tayu. So Dr. Gemara, we can't inspect work because Berifka, they dug trenches. So Frank Gemara, so check the trenches. If they're really nice trenches and they're deep and they're sharp and they're schmuck, maybe then they are entitled to more. Rivka Nami made the yadi. So Dr. Gemara, no, the Mali Maya, they were already full of water. So you couldn't even examine if they were a higher quality. If it's all you did, you don't know. So therefore, they can't collect more.
Quality dish.
Yeah. What's the difference? I mean, I know myself, something you can deal with dish and there's clumps all over it and it's not sharp, 2 verticals and horizontals, bumpy. There could be a nice ditch done nicely, or there could be a rough, slippery ditch. That water is going to get stuck on stones along the way because they didn't clear it properly. Or maybe you could say a different prat. The Balabayas said 4. So up until now, we're assuming the Balabayas said 3. The HR guy said 4. At the end of the day, they were disappointed. They only got paid 3. But now let's go back to the original prat. The Balabayas said 4. So that's the first prat the Gemara wanted to entertain. And the Gemara said, what's the problem? How could they have tarumas? They agreed to work for 3. For that to say no. The Amrilay, less loch, ultimate type of babalav. Don't you hold of the pasuk that says you shouldn't hold back good from if it's coming to them. So if you know that the balabais is willing to pay us 4, why would you undercut us? Why would you undercut us? That's why it can't be that he's making money on the spread, because then he has a right to negotiate on his behalf. But you had no benefit. So a B that you shouldn't pay us. So therefore, they have tinus. If you know that you had a bigger budget, you should have given us the full budget. Sounds very unionish.
The property managers do it all the time.
What do you mean?
They bargain for the owner.
Right.
So even though they know that.
Right. They want to get a better deal. Right. So what's wrong with that? Only a union guy will say it's not good. Okay. Zok Gemara weiter. I have to rush through these sugyas. I can't dwell on them. It makes me too nervous. Zok Gemara weiter. Pshita. The Amrle Balabayis Bitlasa. The Balabayis told the HR guy 3. The Ozal Iu, and now this HR guy went and Amrle Ba'arba. He promised the workers 4. But the Amrle, we have to now drill down a little bit into the nuances of what exactly was the wording used in the contract. So if the Amrle, if the worker said, we'll accept your 4, Kimoy Sha'amar Balabayis. So we're not fully trusting you. We're accepting 4, which you're offering us, like the Balabayis said. Then when you say Daitayu A'iluya, what does Daitayu A'iluya mean? It means they always have in mind to get the best available pay. As Rashi says, Daitayu A'iluya. Av Apisha Amruloi, Hare Aduniskarin, Kidivre Balabayis. Even though they said that we're willing to accept the offer of the Balabayis, in other words, we don't trust you what you're promising us here now as 4. Whatever the Balabayis wanted to give us, that's what we want. But surely loy livchois mikitzvasoi shalzeh amru eloise. the balabais in this case only said 3, right? The HR guy said 4. So when they said we'll take the job at 4, Kimosh Amar balabais, they surely don't mean if it turns out the balabais said 3, we'll accept 3. No, they were thinking if the balabais said more, we want more. They're for sure not looking to make a concession. The kachamru. So this is what they mean to say that we're taking the 3 Kimosh Amar balabais. What you're saying is mehemnet lon. Your belief to us, we believe you. The haki Amar balabais that the balabais promised for. The kivin shabalabais poiches, but since in fact the balabais did not promise 4, he only promised 3. You Amar lahem hai schacham alai. If the HR guy takes responsibility, yitei mishaloi, he would have to pay the extra 1, as we just learned. The Amar schacham al balabais, then yesh lem taruma shalov, which is exactly the case that we're stelling on the Mishnah as. So the guy said, the balabais is offering you 4. They said, we'll take the 4 Kamosh Amar balabais. It means they're entitled to 4. And you can't say, oh, since you said Kamosh Amar balabais, it means you're accepting the 3. They only meant if the balabais actually said more. That's where we want what the balabais said. Ella, balabais barbo. What if the balabais actually originally promised 4? V'yozal iu, and here the HR guy promised them amalu b'tlosa. He only offered them 3. The Amri, and there they answer the same way, Kamosh Amar balabais. So now we have a question. My adibura didei kasamchi. Do they believe this agent that the balabai said 3? The Amrile Mehemnet Lon, we believe you, the Hachi Amar balabais, and therefore they have to accept the 3. Oidilma adibura de balabais kasamchi. Or maybe they say, no, we're relying on the balabais, and therefore we get 4. Because we never really accepted your 3, we always had in mind to get the maximum what the balabais offered. Let's hear Rashi. Elahami Boilam. Amarli balabais barba. Who Amarlu Tlosa. And they told him, Haray Anu Niskarin Kamosh Amar balabais. We will accept the contract that the balabais is offering. So what does that mean? My. Does that mean they actually rely on the HR guy? Adibur the Poil Samchi. This is what they meant. We truly believe you, the Hachi Amar balabais. The balabais at 3. And therefore, therefore, they only are entitled to pay of 3, which is how we learned one of the pshatim in the Mishnah. They never trusted him. This is what they said. We'll take the job, but we definitely don't trust you on the amount. Whatever the balabais really offered, that's the amount for which we're agreeing to work. And there's no sort of Shavah B'Kiva like the Gemara asked earlier. They accepted the 3. They did not accept the 3, and therefore B'Shakli Dalar they will ill to demand 4 from the balabais. So that is the Shai. So Zakmar Tashma. So the question is really, what is the human nature? When someone as a shliach says something, does the person who's being spoken to by the shliach, does he trust and accept what the shliach is saying when he says Kadas balabais, or he's not trusting, he's skeptical? That is the shaila that the Gemara is probing. So Tashma, Havaligiti, a woman told the shliach, bring me my get. Now, a shliach lahava, she can make a shliach like Kabbalah. She can say, you could be in my place, and if I'm a Kabbalah get, I'm a Gereshus right away. I'm giving you that koyach. If you're a Kabbalah get, I will become a Gereshus right away. But she didn't say that. She said, Havaligiti, bring it to me, which means she's saying, go to my husband, convince him to send the get with you to me, and when you deliver the get to me, at that point I'm a Gereshus. So she made him a shliach leilacha, which he doesn't have the power to do. So basically, she's just telling him, go get my husband to make you into a shliach leilacha. Now the shliach walks up to the husband, and he says, Ishtach Amar, you know what your wife told me? Hiskabaligiti. Your wife made me into a shliach like Kabbalah. And now the husband, listening to the shliach, gives the shliach the get. Vehu oimer helech kamosh amra. I'm going to give you the get under the terms that my wife said. So here again, his wife said halacha, but the shliach told him Kabbalah. So what is the halacha? Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravua. Rav Nachman said in the name of Rabba Baravua, Amar Rav in the name of Rav. Afilu hagiga get liyada. Even if the shliach, who really said, I want to be a shliach like Kabbalah, because that's what he told the husband, even if he ends up delivering the get to the hands of the woman, eino megereshus. She would not be megereshus. Meaning that he's not a shliach like Kabbalah, and he's not a shliach leilacha. He's nothing. Shmas mina. What do you see from here? Adibura didei kasamach. The balabayis, the husband, must be relying on what the shliach misrepresented himself as a shliach lekabbalah. And I gave it to him thinking that he's a shliach lekabbalah. I didn't make him into a shliach leilacha. So now he's nishta her. So therefore, when he receives the get, it's not a good get because he's not a shliach lekabbalah. And when he delivers the get to the wife, it's not a good get because he wasn't a shliach leilacha either. If the husband doesn't trust a word the shliach says, and he's saying, I'm ignoring you, I'm just giving it based on what my wife really told you, well then that's exactly called being memana shliach leilacha. Then at least he would have made this shliach into a shliach leilacha because that's really what his wife said. Elamai, you have arrived from here that it's not adibur didaka samach. He's relying on what the shliach said. I'm sorry. I hear, but the Gemara is able to diffuse this raya even without that svar. So the question here is, what is better? What's a better position for the husband to be in? What's better for him? What would he rather have? Because you have to understand, in our discussion with the money, we know the Pe'alim would rather have more. Daita Iluya, right? So if there's a svar of a Daita Iluya over here, what is better for the husband? So let's just take a quick peek in Rashi. A woman who told the shliach, if Tim says Bailey, if you find my husband, and more loy shayishlach liaskiti biyotcha, v'teyasa shlucha shall Bailey legarsheni kishabigi get liyad. Become a shliach loylach on behalf of my husband. The shliach loylacha, it's al habal asos. The husband can make. The woman cannot make a shliach loylach. But isha miskareshes kishayagia get liyada. A shliach loylacha, the way it works is he's instead of the husband. So when he delivers the get to her hand, then she becomes migrareshes. But the shliach lekabbalah is al ha'isha las. The woman has to appoint a shliach lekabbalah. Shehu shlucha uchamoisa. He should be like her, and his receiving the get should be like she received the get. V'tiskarish mishagi get the yad shliach, and then she will become a migrareshes as soon as the shliach receives the get. Zok the gemara afilu get liyada in the migrareshes. Almo you see from here adibura didekasam. You see clearly that the husband fully trusted the shliach and gave it to him as a shliach lekabbalah. V'hachi amarle, and this is what the husband says, or what he's in fact saying. Mehem nisli dekach amra v'loy asu shliach leilacha. I believe you that she said that you should become a shliach lekabbalah, and therefore I'm not appointing you as a shliach leilacha. Hilchach, because of that, you're correct. Mikan and mikan. Ain't kan shlichas. There's no shlichas at all because she didn't make him into a shliach lekabbalah, and he didn't make him into a shliach leilacha, and therefore shliach leilacha. She cannot make a shliach leilacha. Barei havali amrloi v'lo yiskabel, and she said have, not his kabel, so she's not a shliach lekabbalah either. Ba'bal nasnoi loi b'tor shliach kabbalah u'shliach zeh ain't biyad bal las. The balabais cannot make such a thing. If he's ignoring the shliach and he's just giving it based on the woman's intention, which would have been him making the shliach into a shliach leilacha, v'lo ledvar of hemen elahelach kama shamra, he ka'amarle. That's what the husband intends when he gives the get over. And so then, in fact, he did make a shliach leilacha. And that's something that the husband can do. So from the fact that it's not a get at all, you see that he fully trusted the shliach lekabal, the shliach, and he's giving it to the shliach based on the shliach's representation or misrepresentation of himself.
What would the Baal really want?
I'm sorry?
What would the Baal?
So I want to see Tosis because this is very gishmat. These are the guys that had the word the da samach. He might get the yada mir discourage. Zok Tosis. The iamrina. If you say the gabe poilim daita iluya de balabais, our intention is when we accept your 3, it's with the condition that if your balabais said 4, we really want that 4, right? So hakanami, how would that fit in our case of a get? Havalele meimar the daite de balabais a iluya dida. The balabais would want to do what the wife does, what the wife said, if that would benefit him. The Amra, what did she say? Have legiti. She said, I want this person to be a shliach leilacha. Afol gav, the haidika Amar shliach, his kabel legiti, have ilu yitfei lebal. Now we see, even though it's better for the Baal if this shliach is a shliach lekabbalah. You know why? Shemis kareshes Yosy b'meira. If he wants to divorce his wife, he wants to get rid of her as soon as possible. So we'd much rather that this shliach be a shliach lekabala. So it should put him from this machshaifa. Im haisa ha'isha imeris came. That would only be true if his wife truly made him into a shliach lekabala. Surely that's what the husband would rather want. If it should put him in there. Mikal makom hashta shamra isha havei, but based on reality, where she never appointed this shliach as a shliach lekabala. So now have it face chusabal is samach amai de ka'amar shetishkarish mia kishigiget liyada. Based on the reality, it's surely better for the husband to be relying on the wife, and it should be a shliach lo'ilocha, because at least he can get rid of her. Otherwise, I can't get rid of her at all. The chivin deloy migrisha, since the psak halacha was that she's not migreshes at all, Alma, you see clearly, lav daita the bal a'ilu yedida. He's not thinking that if she offered something better, I want it. Because if that was the case, then we would say, in fact, that he made this shliach into a shliach lo'ilocha. And therefore, we want to apply it, the hakanamik abba problem, less than the memer, the daita ilu the balbais. Because if you say it there, you should say it here. But he didn't. He said, I want. If he spoke out, well, the best case scenario is shlich l'kabbalah. Best case scenario is shlich l'kabbalah because he wants rid of her, right? So that's why he's toying with it. But Tosha says, I love this Tosha. Ein lefarish the iluy the baal have a masha any miscarriages from here. Don't say that he'd rather it go slowly because he wants to torture the neshama out of. So that Tosha says a discussion of what's better or worse. But Tosha says the best thing is question puta. That's what Tosha says. That's all I wanted to take out of here. That the psyche of a person is let me put of it. I hear. Okay, Zot Gemara Vayter. Amar Ravashi, I don't think this is a raya at all to our discussion, and I'll tell you why. Let's analyze this for a second. What if the case was a different case with a different conclusion? And what would the case have been? His kabbaligiti. The woman, in fact, did make this fellow into a shlich l'kabbalah. And when he came to the husband, he misrepresented himself, and he said the opposite. Your wife said you should make me to a shlich l'locha. So be'etem, the wife made him into a shlich l'kabbalah. He misrepresented himself, and he told the Baal, I want you to make me into a shlich l'locha. And what did the husband respond when he gave the get to the shliach? Heilech kamoisha amra. Here, the way she said. And if Rab Nachman would have said, the Amar Rab Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravu, Amar Rab, if the psak halacha would have been that the moment the shliach receives the get, the woman is migureshes, meaning she's in fact the shliach is in fact the shliach lekabbalah. There you'd have a raya almadat dibur didakason. There you clearly see that he's ignoring what the shliach is telling him, and he's only believing what the wife said. Whatever my wife said, then she said kabbalah. That would be a very clear raya. Or inami, if you would have paskined if the psak would have been that she's migoreshes when the get reaches the hand of the woman, then you see that the bailim trusted the shliach wanted to be a shliach lo'ilacha, and that's what the husband did. There it would be quite clear whether or not I'm giving the get under the condition that the shliach said, or I'm ignoring what the shliach said and giving it under the condition that the wife said. But in your case, where it's not a good get at all, you don't see anything. You know why? Because you know whose intention you forgot to consider here? You forgot to consider the intention of the shliach himself. What is harder for a shliach to be? A shliach l'kabbalah or a shliach l'ilach? L'ilach is much harder because I got to go to the husband, I got to go all the way back, right? So if the shliach was told to be a shliach l'ilach by the wife, and he lied, and he said, I want to be a shliach l'kabbalah, what he's doing is, I'm rejecting the shliach l'ilach. I don't want to be a shliach l'ilach. I don't want to go back. If you want to give it to me, and it should be a kinyan right now, then I'm happy to do it for you. I have to schlep back now to where I came from, I'm not interested. So oy bezoi, forget his intention, forget her intention. The shliach is not willing to be a shliach l'ilach. So let me just finish the thought of the Gemara. So inami ela hasam mishum da'akar shliach lishluchusei legemrei. The shliach rejected anything. The amal shliach l'kabbalah havina. He said, I'm willing to be a shliach l'kabbalah, but l'ilach l'havina. So therefore, even if you're going to say that when the husband gives the get over to the shliach, he fully intended to give it to him b'ter shliach l'ilach, it's still not a good get because the shliach is rejecting a shliach l'ilach. You're going to ask me, Lamait say, we're talking about he went back, right? He ended up going back, right? 1 second. He ended up going back. Yeah, he went back and he gave it to him. So what do you mean he rejected? So if you're actually, no, at the time when it was given to him, where he said, I want to be shliach l'kabbalah, he didn't want it. So even though the Balabais gave it to him, shliach l'locha, right? Even if the Balabais is giving it like the das of his wife, he's not accepting it. If later on he ends up going back to that city and he ends up meeting her and giving it to her, doesn't matter, because he never accepted upon himself a shliach l'locha. Not if he's a shliach l'kabbalah. If he's a shliach l'kabbalah, she never has to have it.
But she's.
So that's a different story. She'll get proof. But many times, even Gershon today, where they're in different countries, there'll be a shliach l'kabbalah, and she doesn't get the actual get.
Hold up.
Yeah.
Oh,
Proof the Bezin can write her up a star that she's Megurafis. Yeah. Okay. Zok the Gemara about. So therefore, you don't have a right from there at all because you forgot to consider the fact that the shliach himself is rejecting an appointment of a shliach l'kabbalah. Okay. So let's pause over here. And Ibo Yisema, let's go back to the beginning of the sugya. At the beginning of the sugya, we were struggling to understand what was the issue with the hitu zeh. What exactly happened? So Ashinuyi the Reish Pirkei Koi. We're going back on the original question that we had. What was this misunderstanding with the Poilim that we're talking about? So Hai Tana Chazru Nami Hitu Karile. We had this whole Torah. That's it. It says Hitu. It must be that the employees got into a siksuk amongst them, and that's why we were discussing the HR guy misrepresenting the Balabais. Let's put that aside. Let's say that maybe we are speaking about a direct miscommunication or a direct taking advantage from the employer directly to the employee. And let's say that's the case. And hitu could mean also it's directly between the employer and the employee. The Tanya we learned the hitu es balabais, and they fooled the balabais. Oy balabais hita oysam, or the balabais fooled them. Ein lem zalza ela tarumas. All they have on each other are tarumas. What's the case? The case is, let's say I hire somebody and I cancel on them. So what is the rule? So let's say I made a deal. I need you two guys to go to this and this field tomorrow and plow it or harvest it or whatever it is. And then first thing in the morning before you left, I call you quickly. Cancel. I don't need you for today. So then you didn't leave yet. There you can only have terumas. What if I hired people to transport tfuah from a faraway place and they went to the next city to pick up the tfuah? They went already and there's no tfuah there. Or poyalim or they were supposed to plow the field and it was all muddy, they couldn't plow the field, but they went already, they started the job. Then then he has to pay in full, because up until now, first thing in the morning, they could still scramble and find another job for the day. Once they started the day already, and they actually got out there, you'll force the balabais to pay. That's a bigger damage. Avol, he doesn't have to pay them as if they did all the work necessary, because this guy who he hired to bring all this tool from the next city, he's now coming back with an empty load. He's using much less gas. It's much easier. So he doesn't have to pay him the full price. He could pay him a discounted rate. Or they were going to go plow the field. Now they can't plow the field. So I don't have to pay you full price as if you plowed the field, but I have to pay you because I wasted your whole day. Oh, the Gemara is going to get into that. That's a very good point. The Gemara is not going to get into, was it the Baal's fault or not? But that's only if they didn't start. They got there and they saw that there's nothing to do. But if they actually started already, that's already a whole new level. You assess the value of the work that they did, and they get paid for that in full. Let's say they accepted upon themselves, we're going to cut down this whole field, and we're going to charge you 2 sloim. They cut down half the field, and they stopped the middle. Or similarly, beged larig b'shnei sloim, or an argo chetzoy v'nich chetzoy. So shomin lahen is masha. You see the value of what they did. So normally, if they did have to work, they would get 1 seller, right? Because it's 2 sloim for the whole work, 1 seller for half the work. But what happens if at the end of the first half of the day, the price of work went up, and hoya yafa shisha dinarim? Now the value of the work went from 4 dinarim, which is a seller, to 6 dinarim. So what does he do? Noislam seller. He only has to pay them a seller for the first half of the work. Or or they can finish and they can pay in full. So Mother's thinking, what do you mean? What do you mean I pay them a seller? If I'm going to have to hire now a guy for 6 dinarim to finish, doesn't the Mishnah say that that to come off their salary? Ein chanami. This Brisa argues on our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says the yara chayzer is ala tachtoina, right? So the balabais can say, since I have to finish for 6, I'm taking the extra 2 away from you because you backed out on me. This time holds no. You still have to pay them for their work, and you have to deal with finding somebody to complete the work, even though it's going to cost you. V'imsela noishen lamsela. Rab Doisa Omer. Rab Doisa says, and this is the sheet of our Mishnah. Shomin lehen masha osid lehei osos. You look at what the cost is going to be to the owner to finish this project. Hoyayofa shisha dinarim. If it's going to cost him now 60 dinarim to finish, that will come out of the pocket of the workers who backed out. Noishen lam shekel. He only has to pay them a shekel for the first half. Even though originally it would have been a seller for the first half, he could take 2 dinarim off of their pay to finish the job. It's called a bond. It's called like a bid bond. It's called a completion bond. When you bid a very big project, they make you get a bond from the bank that if you're not able to finish the job in the middle, they'll have enough money to hire somebody else to finish the job. Or they can still finish the work and get their original pay. When do we say all this? That's bedover she'nov. That's when it's not a crisis to get the job done immediately. You evaluate what the normal cost to do things is, and based on that, you figure out how much these guys who walked off the job are going to get paid. If we're talking about crisis, then you could charge, you can pay whatever you want and go back after them or fool them. So means you hire workers, whatever it takes, and you can go after them for the difference. Matan means I originally told you that you're going to get a seller for the second half of the work. I'll tell you what, I'll pay you double if you stay on the job. How much extra can you pay replacement workers? In the union, they're called scabs. You can even pay 40 or 50 zuz. You can pay a wildly astronomical amount if they backed out on you. This is only because you simply can't find anybody else and your mom is stuck. But what if you would be able to find the Omar say then if they could easily, the balabais can easily find somebody to finish the job at the same price that they would have done it for, then the balabais has terumas. You messed me up, and we'll have to go find somebody else. Today the chasna and all the people are going to schlep the props back out of me, so I have terumas. But it doesn't cost me anymore, so that's all I have. Tani Tana Kamed Rav. A brisa was presented in front of Rav, and it says Noisin Lahem Schoran Mishale. He has to pay them in full, which is different than what we learned, right? We learned that if they didn't start, that if they started, he pays them kapoyel bot. So Amar le Chabibi Amar, and Rav used to call Rab Chia, I think it was his uncle, he referred to him as Chabibi. Chabibi Amar, Chia said, Ilu ano havoi, if I was the balabais over there, lo yahivno lahen ela kapoyel bot. I would have only paid them kapoyel bottle if they came and they came and there was no wheat there, or they came to the field and it was muddy. I would have only paid them kapoyel bottle. And you're quoting a brisa that says Noislam Schar Mishalem. Frankly, more what's Rav Chia saying? Our brisa says the same thing. After our brisa says Noislam Schar Mishalem, the brisa continues and says, so our brisa also says you only pay kapoyel bottle. V'alakatani eina daima habaton labareka oisam alacha liyoshev bottle. So how could he say I disagree with the brisa that you quoted? The end of the brisa clarifies that of course it only means kapoyel bottle, which is exactly what Rav Chia said he would do. So in fact, they didn't quote the full brisa to Rav Chia. They only quoted half the brisa. Had they quoted the whole brisa, or maybe it was to Rav, they didn't quote the whole brisa. They quoted the whole brisa. Rav would have said, perfect. That's exactly what Rav Chia said. That's one version of how the story went down. Ikodamri, there's another version of how the story went down. They actually did finish the whole brisa, and he knew that if the worker came to start the work, and he realized that there is no work, there's no wheat where he has to pick it up, or the field is muddy, they can't plow it. In fact, everybody knows it's kapoyel bottle. So what was Rav's what was Rav's protest when he heard this price quoted? This is what he said. Chabibi Omar, my great uncle Reb Chia said, if I would have been there, lo yahivna like klal, I wouldn't have even paid anything. I wouldn't have given them a penny. Too bad for them. Viat Amrit Kapoil Bottle, and you are quoting me a brisa that says I have to pay Kapoil Bottle. Again, this is the case where they showed up to the job, they didn't start, but they realized that there is no work for them. So the problem is, it's schwer because Reb Chia seems to say that in this case I don't have to pay a penny. The brisa says that I have to pay Kapoil Bottle. What is it? So this is where the Gemara introduces Dubi Sfara. Loi Kasha. It all depends on whose fault it was that this happened. This is where they saw the job the night before. And there's a shaila how to learn this. Pashas and Rashi is, this is where the employees went out the night before to assess the job. The other cases where they didn't see the job before. Let's see what that impact is. Zokt Rashi. I'm on the third from the bottom line. The Balabais took the workers and said, let me show you the work that we have for tomorrow. They saw it. They didn't notice it in the field. They were there. They could have seen it. They didn't inspect it properly, and nobody realized that this field was unworkable. Or it poured the night before. It poured the night before. Nobody could have known that before. Then less Lukal, they don't get anything. Why? Because the Balabais did whatever he could have done. It was full disclosure. The Balabais didn't fool them. The Achazu Inu Gufayu, they saw what the scenario was. And they know that when they get hired for a job, there's a risk that the job will evaporate. And that's part of life. They should have never went out. They know it rained last night. They saw the field before. So therefore, the Balabais is not held responsible. But if the Balabais didn't show them the work the night before, all of Haya lost a slave ledavar. The Bailam should have focused and paid attention to this issue, and to notify them. He should have said, listen here, you want to go check, but I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to pay you if you don't. He didn't say that. Since he didn't say that, he's responsible. Now we have to pay Kapoya Bottle because he didn't show them the job before. They had no way of protecting themselves, and he didn't tell them, I'm not going to pay you if it's not good. So they're relying on him that there will be a good scenario. But if they saw it before, they can't rely on him.
No matter what he said before.
That's right. No, because once again, he should have told them, I'm not accepting responsibility. Okay, so Zog to Gemara weiter. Just like the story that happened with Rava, somebody hired people to dig trenches for him. But also Mitra Umol Yamayel. And it got all muddy. You can't dig trenches when it's full of puddles and mud. If they inspected it the night before, say to the poilim, then the poilim lose. They should have known better. As Rashi says, say to the poilim, Sham Shiyardu has the poilim. The Loyoivlu Midi, the Amalu Maslaichugam. I don't have to pay you anything. Your mazel was going. It's not my fault that it rained. But if you didn't show them the job before, then say to the balabais loses, and he has to pay them kapoil bottle, as Rashi says, like Sayram Urta, say to the balabais, the Amrle mi yemar da daita the huara agartan. But Rashi now introduces a new svara. You didn't show us the property. So how do I know? Yeah, that property is full of mud. But I didn't know that was the property you were going to send us to. You didn't tell us before which property it was. So you can't say that I have to accept this on myself the peril, because I thought you would have had a different field to send me to. So therefore, you got to pay me the poil bottle. Okay, we'll stop here and we'll be mamshach with him tomorrow. What's that?
This week.
This is much more practical. As a matter of fact, Rabbi Rasen was saying there's going to be